After a decade of loyalty, my manager called me into his office and said, "Your position's being eliminated, but don't worry, we'll get someone cheaper to do your job." When I asked why, he smirked, "Because you're convenient to cut loose." I just said, "I appreciate the honesty." The next day, he walked into a meeting he never saw coming. I gave 10 years to that place. 10 damn years. I wasn't some flashy exec or high-paid director. I was operations. I kept things running. Quietly. Efficiently. I was the guy that people in the trenches went to when something fell apart and they didn't want the higher-ups finding out. I didn't ask for glory. I didn't play politics. I showed up, did my job, trained the interns, covered for people when they needed time off, stayed late when systems crashed, and handled the things nobody else wanted to touch. The company was called Redridge Logistics. Mid-sized, nothing special, based out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We handled warehousing and fulfillment for a bunch of Midwest companies. Paper products, seasonal stuff, food supplies, you name it. I started as a floor tech in the warehouse, moved to shift supervisor, then operations coordinator. Not glamorous titles, but I earned every step. I never asked for a promotion. They gave them to me when it became impossible to ignore how much work I was doing behind the scenes. My manager, Paul Donnelly, came in around year 6. Fresh off some startup sale in Chicago, wearing tight pants, fancy watches, and calling meetings touch points. The kind of guy who said things like, "Let's circle back," and "We're not problem solving, we're opportunity surfing." Everyone hated him. He didn't know the warehouse. He didn't care about the team. He cared about spreadsheets and performance metrics. Still, I played nice. Covered for him when he missed deadlines. Cleaned up his messes. Kept my head down. Until that Wednesday morning. The setup, I came in early as usual. 6:15 a.m. Walked the floor. Noticed the loading dock had a broken sensor again, wrote it up for repair. One of the guys, Hector, had been puking since 4 a.m. and no one had relieved him. I covered for an hour until the temp guy showed. Normal chaos. At 9:30, Paul's assistant, Lindsay, poked her head in. "He wants to see you," she said quietly, not looking me in the eye. I should have known. His office was sleek, cold, and smelled like that expensive espresso he drank. I sat down across from him. He didn't even look up right away. Just tapped at his tablet. Then, "We're eliminating your position," he said. Just like that. No greeting. I blinked. "Excuse me?" He leaned back. "We're restructuring operations. We're hiring 2 junior coordinators to take over your responsibilities. It'll save us about 40% on costs." I was still trying to process it. "After 10 years? You're replacing me with 2 temps." He smiled. It was the kind of smile a dentist gives before pulling out a tooth. "Look, it's not personal. You're just convenient to cut loose. You've got no family on your benefits, no direct reports, and no contracts tying us down. It's just business." I didn't say anything for a second. I could feel the heat rising behind my eyes, but I forced it down. Swallowed it. I gave him a slow nod. "I appreciate the honesty," I said. He grinned like he'd won. "We'll give you 2 weeks severance. Just sign the paperwork with Lindsay." I left his office, walked straight to the break room, locked the door behind me, and sat there until my hands stopped shaking. He thought I was nothing. He thought I'd disappear. What he didn't know is that I never left a mess behind. And I never forgot betrayal. Laying the groundwork first, I didn't make a scene. That's what Paul expected. A dramatic blow-up. Something he could spin to HR. I played it cool. Said goodbye to my guys. Gave Lindsay a tired smile when I signed the papers. Then I went home and started digging. See, Paul didn't know what I really did at Redridge. He didn't know that I kept backups of vendor contacts, warehouse reports, internal compliance logs, inspection notes, and contractor records, because he was too lazy to understand how operations worked. He didn't know I had a full spreadsheet mapping every minor violation and safety concern we'd quietly fixed over the years to avoid fines. And he really didn't know that 2 years ago, during a massive storm, I personally rigged an illegal workaround to bypass a fried panel so we could keep power on, because Paul refused to pay for the emergency electricians. That saved us $50,000 in downtime. It also violated state code. But I kept all the receipts. That's when the idea started forming. I wasn't going to destroy the company. No, Redridge had some good people. But Paul had to go. And I knew exactly how to make that happen. The first strike, I waited 4 days. Just enough for them to start getting sloppy without me. Then I called a former supplier rep, Aaron, from Keystone Electrical. We'd become friendly over the years. I told him I'd been let go and asked if Redridge had paid the balance from Q4 yet. He laughed. "Nope. Your boss said there were invoice discrepancies." Said he'd pay 60 cents on the dollar if we didn't want to eat the late fees. That pissed me off. I told him to dig up all emails, especially ones where Paul approved the work. Then I gave him the number for someone at the Michigan State Licensing Board. I didn't tell him what to say, just pointed him in the right direction. Then I emailed OSHA. With everything. The bypassed panel. The hidden spills. The missed fire drills that Paul said were not worth the disruption. Then I waited. The meeting he didn't see coming the next Monday, I walked into a Marriott off 28th Street. I wasn't wearing my warehouse clothes. I had a button-up, slacks, clean shave. I was there for a meeting. Not a Redridge meeting. An industry roundtable. Logistics directors. Vendors. City code consultants. I'd been invited before, but Paul never let me attend. Said I wasn't presentable. Guess who was on the speaker list? Paul. Giving a talk on efficiency through operational transparency. I signed in as a guest. Sat in the front row. Watched him walk on stage, smug as ever. I raised my hand halfway through the Q&A and asked, "Could you speak to how operational transparency relates to falsifying compliance reports to avoid fines?" He froze. People turned. He said, "I'm sorry?" I repeated the question. Word for word. Someone from the state board, who I knew was in the crowd, started taking notes. Paul tried to laugh it off. Said, "I think someone has an axe to grind." I smiled. No axe. Just records. I stood, handed a thick envelope to a woman from the Logistics Council, nodded politely and walked out. After that meeting at the Marriott, things moved faster than I thought they would. I didn't expect the fallout to start within 48 hours, but maybe I underestimated just how many enemies Paul had made, and how many of them were just waiting for someone to throw the first punch. The day after the roundtable, I got a call from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. "Is this Dean Cooper?" "Yes." "Who's this?" "This is Sylvia Rowland. I'm with the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs. We've received some complaints regarding Redridge Logistics. Do you have a moment to discuss?" I walked out to my garage, shut the door, and sat down on the old couch. "I've got more than a moment," I said. And I did. Over the next week, I laid everything out for Sylvia and her team. Emails. Photos. Voicemails. Copies of emergency work orders Paul had told me to falsify. I was careful not to incriminate myself, but I didn't lie either. I told the truth, just with a sharp focus on who gave the orders and who ignored the warnings. What I didn't know, what changed everything, was that Sylvia had already received a formal complaint from a temp warehouse worker who'd gotten injured 2 weeks after I left. Slipped on an unmarked spill and cracked his wrist. They didn't file it with insurance. Paul told him it wasn't worth the paperwork. That was the first domino. The tipping point. A friend of mine, Marcus, still worked in the IT department. We weren't close, but I once helped him cover a shipment error that would have cost him his job. He owed me. One night he called me from his car. "Man, I don't know what you started, but it's getting ugly in here." "What do you mean?" "Compliance team showed up this morning. They've been locked in Paul's office with legal since 9 a.m. I heard someone mention OSHA and state code violations. And he's losing it." "Anything else?" He hesitated. "Yeah. He tried to pin everything on you." I laughed. Of course he did. But that was his mistake. Because Paul never thought about the paper trail. He never thought anyone would dare look closely at what he signed, or ignored. And the more he flailed, the more attention he drew. Collateral damage. It was around this time I got an email from Lindsay, his assistant. Subject line, "Off the record?" She asked to meet. We chose a diner in Wyoming just outside the city. She looked tired. Well, like she hadn't slept in days. "I think I'm going to lose my job," she said without even saying hello. "Because of Paul?" I asked. She nodded. Then she dropped the bomb. "He was sleeping with a contractor. Gave her a full-time role with inflated pay, no interview." I found the email chain. "HR doesn't know yet." I leaned back in the booth. That wasn't just a violation, it was grounds for termination. She slid a flash drive across the table. "I don't want to get dragged into this," she said. "But I also think you deserve to know what's really been going on." I didn't ask questions. I just took it. Inside was everything. Vendor kickbacks. Expense report fraud. Private travel charged to corporate cards. I didn't send it to HR. I sent it to the company's CFO, David Landry. I'd met him twice. He was serious. Old school. Didn't like Paul's new wave nonsense. The kind of guy who ran audits for fun. That same week, Paul's name was quietly removed from the Redridge website. But I wasn't done. Burning bridges, one match at a time with Paul off the board, you'd think I'd feel better. But I didn't. Not yet. Because he'd landed on his feet. I found out through LinkedIn that he was interviewing at a company in Indianapolis, Bexler Freight Group. Bigger company. More money. That wasn't acceptable. I created a brand new Gmail. Used a burner laptop I picked up off Craigslist. I drafted a long, detailed email. Attached scanned copies of everything, violation records, the kickback logs, the HR complaints, and a screenshot from the state licensing website showing an open investigation with Redridge listed. Subject line: before you hire Paul Donnelly, please read this. I sent it to Bexler's entire executive team. 2 days later, his LinkedIn went quiet. Open to work, status disappeared. The final twist: remember the injured temp worker? His name was Jalen. He was 22. Broke. Trying to support his mom. I reached out to him. Asked if he ever got compensation. He said no. They made him sign something he didn't understand. I gave him the number to a labor attorney I knew. Paid the consultation fee out of pocket. That lawsuit hit Redridge like a grenade. Not because of the money, it wasn't much, but because it opened the door to discovery. Which meant everything else got pulled into the light. Paul tried to settle quietly. But it was too late. By the time the press got wind of the OSHA violations, the contractor scandal, and the fraud, Paul Donnelly was radioactive. No one would touch him. The last I heard, he was driving for a delivery service outside Toledo. And me? I didn't go back to logistics. I didn't need to. I started consulting. Quietly. I help companies identify internal risks, operations, HR, compliance. I teach them what happens when they ignore the people doing the real work. But sometimes, when I'm out for coffee or on a quiet walk downtown, I see someone who reminds me of Paul, smiling like he's untouchable. And I remember the way he smirked at me that day in his office. You're convenient to cut loose. Yeah. Well, now so is he. I thought it was over. I really did. After the lawsuit, the blacklisted job prospects, the removed LinkedIn, and the local article that leaked the OSHA citations, Paul Donnelly had nothing left. But I underestimated how stubborn some men can be when they think the world owes them. About 4 months after his fall from grace, I got a call from Marcus again, my old IT buddy. He was leaving Redridge, heading to a better company in Ohio. Before he left, he wanted me to know one last thing. You remember Paul's fiancée? I didn't know he had one, I said. Marcus laughed under his breath. Exactly. He kept her secret from most people. Real estate agent. Name's Gina. From what I've heard, she bankrolled most of his lifestyle. Nice condo, vacations, even helped him get a down payment on a cabin up north. Let me guess, I said, already knowing where it was going. Yeah, Marcus confirmed. She just found out everything. The cheating. The fraud. The fact that he listed her as a silent investor on documents for a fake LLC he used to bill Redridge for personal expenses. She filed police reports. Sued him for fraud. I didn't even have to lift a finger for that one. But that's when things got strange. About a week later, I started getting voicemails. From unknown numbers. Men's voices threatening me. Saying I ruined a man's life. One of them called me a snake. Another warned me to watch my back. I wasn't scared. Not yet. But I was cautious. So I checked the police reports on Paul's name. Found something unexpected. 2 months before his firing, he'd quietly registered a firearms license in Indiana. Address listed? A P.O. box. That same week, he sent a wire transfer to a private investigator in Illinois. That's when it clicked. He wasn't just trying to bounce back. He was digging. Watching. Trying to find out who leaked everything. And somehow he'd figured out it was me. Face to face, I live alone just outside Cascade Township. Quiet area. Wooded. Only 3 houses on my road. One night, about a month after the threat started, I came home from the store and found a car parked down the road. Black sedan. Windows tinted. Lights off. It was almost midnight. I parked in my driveway, shut the lights off, and waited. The car didn't move. I grabbed my phone, started recording, and walked toward it. Slowly. When I got within 20 feet, the driver's door opened. Paul stepped out. He looked nothing like the man I remembered. His suit was gone. His hair was longer. Greasy. He looked bloated, like he hadn't eaten a decent meal in weeks. You happy now? He said. His voice cracked. Why are you here? I asked. Come. You destroyed me. No, I said. You did that to yourself. He shook his head like a man trying to stay awake after a car crash. I lost everything. Gina, my condo, the job offers. I'm living in my brother's garage. You couldn't just walk away, huh? You had to tear it all down. I didn't blink. You called me convenient to cut loose. I was joking, he hissed. It was a business decision. And now it's karma, I said. He lunged forward, but I was ready. I raised the can of mace I'd had in my jacket and sprayed him full in the face. He screamed, collapsed to the ground. I called the cops. Told them a disgraced ex-boss was stalking me. I had the camera footage, the voice recordings, the emails. He got charged with harassment, trespassing, and for the threats made through burner phones. Turns out they traced them right back to him. He spent 60 days in county jail. Violated his parole 2 months later by threatening Gina again. This time they sent him away for real, 18 months in state. The fallout: Redridge cleaned house. 4 managers resigned after the audits. The board brought in a new executive team. They even offered me a consulting position. I declined. I started something new. A service for small businesses who wanted real compliance and operations training, without the corporate games. Lindsay now works with me. So does Jalen, who got a $55,000 settlement from Redridge. As for Paul, he's out now. Lives 2 states away. Works nights. We'll probably never see each other again. But sometimes I imagine what he tells people when they ask what happened to his life. Maybe he says I ruined him. Maybe he says it was politics. But deep down, I know the truth sticks with him. He saw me as disposable. And I made sure that by the time I was done, he was the one who couldn't be kept around.